Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into a story many of us think we know, largely thanks to a certain animated movie from the 90s. We're talking about Pocahontas, but here's the thing. The real story is far more complex, dramatic, and frankly, more interesting than the Disney version. So grab a seat and let's separate the facts from the fiction and uncover the true life of this remarkable woman. First things first, her name wasn't even Pocahontas. Her actual given name was Amanut, and she also went by Matoka. That was a childhood nickname, which some say meant playful one or mischievous one. She was born around 1596, the daughter of the powerful chief Powhatan, the leader of a confederacy of about 30 Algonquin-speaking tribes in the region we now call Virginia. She wasn't just any girl. She was royalty in her own right, part of a sophisticated and well-established society. Now let's bring in the English. In 1607, a group of about 100 men and boys from the Virginia Company of London landed and established the Jamestown settlement. This was a business venture, plain and simple. They were there to find gold, resources, and a passage to the Pacific. What they found instead was a challenging new world, and they were not prepared. They struggled with famine, disease, and conflicts with the native population. This is where the famous story of John Smith comes in. According to Smith's own account, written years later, he was captured by Powhatan's men while exploring. He was brought before the chief and his head was laid on a stone, ready to be executed. But just as the clubs were raised, the young Pocahontas, who would have been only about 10 or 11 years old at the time, threw herself over him, saving his life. It's a dramatic tale, right? A story of love and bravery. The problem is, it's almost certainly not true. Most historians today believe this event never happened, or at least not in the way Smith described. Why? Well, for one, Smith was known for embellishing his adventures. He told a very similar story about being rescued by a beautiful young woman in Hungary years earlier. Coincidence? Maybe. More likely, if anything like this did happen, it was a ritual. It might have been a symbolic ceremony to adopt Smith into the tribe, a display of Powhatan's power over the newcomers. The idea that a preteen girl would romantically intervene to save a 27-year-old man is a very European concept projected onto a completely different culture. There's no evidence of a romantic relationship between Pocahontas and John Smith. Their interactions were more likely that of a curious child and a foreign diplomat. Pocahontas did visit Jamestown often, acting as an emissary for her father, bringing food that helped the starving colonists survive. She was a diplomat, a bridge between two worlds, not a romantic lead. Things took a dark turn in 1613. The relationship between the Powhatan tribes and the English had soured. During this period of tension, an English captain named Samuel Argall devised a plan. He lured Pocahontas onto his ship under false pretenses and captured her. She was held hostage in Jamestown for over a year, with the English demanding the return of English prisoners and stolen weapons. Imagine this, a teenager, probably around 17, ripped from her family and her home, held captive in a foreign settlement. It must have been terrifying. During her captivity, she was instructed in Christianity and eventually baptized, taking the name Rebecca. This wasn't just a simple conversion. It was a political and cultural transformation, whether entirely voluntary or not. While she was held in Jamestown, she met a man named John Rolfe. He was a tobacco planter, a widower who had lost his wife and child on the journey to Virginia. He developed feelings for Pocahontas and wrote a long letter to the governor asking for permission to marry her. He claimed it was for the good of the plantation, the honor of the country, and his own salvation. He said he was not driven by the unbridled desire of carnal affection. Their marriage took place in April 1614. Was it a love match? It's impossible for us to know her true feelings. From the English perspective, the marriage was a brilliant strategic move. It brought about a period of peace between the colonists and the Powhatan people, often called the Peace of Pocahontas. For her father, Chief Powhatan, it might have been seen as a powerful political alliance, cementing ties with the increasingly powerful English. For Pocahontas, it might have been the best choice she had in a very difficult situation. 2 years later, in 1616, the Virginia Company decided to use Pocahontas for a public relations tour. They brought her, John Rolfe, and their infant son Thomas to England. This was a fundraising trip. They presented her as a civilized savage, proof that the native people could be assimilated into English culture, making the investment in the Virginia colony seem worthwhile. In London, she was a sensation, dressed in fine English clothing. She was presented at the court of King James I and Queen Anne. She was treated as visiting royalty, a princess. It was during this time that she had one last and reportedly very awkward reunion with John Smith. He hadn't told her he was in England, and when they met, she was apparently so overwhelmed that she turned away and couldn't speak for several hours. When she finally did, she called him out for the lack of respect he had shown her father and expressed her disappointment. She reminded him that she had called him father when he was in her country. It was a tense and emotional meeting, a far cry from the romantic farewell in the Disney movie. Tragically, the trip to England would be her last journey. In March 1617, as the Rolfes prepared to sail back to Virginia, Pocahontas fell gravely ill. It's not clear what the illness was: pneumonia, tuberculosis, or perhaps a disease she had no immunity to. She was taken ashore at the town of Gravesend, and there, at only about 21 years old, she died. Her final resting place is in a churchyard in Gravesend, thousands of miles from the home she never saw again. Her story didn't end there, though. Her son, Thomas Rolfe, was raised in England and later returned to Virginia as a young man. He inherited land from both his English father and his Native American grandfather, becoming a respected member of the colony. Through him, Pocahontas's bloodline continued, and today, thousands of people, including some very prominent American families, can trace their ancestry back to her. So, when we look at the real story of Pocahontas or Amanute, we see a life that was so much more than a simple fairy tale. She was a child diplomat, a political hostage, a symbol of two cultures colliding, and a young woman who navigated an incredibly complex and dangerous world with intelligence and resilience. Her life was short, but her legacy is immense. She wasn't a character in a love story who had to choose between two men. She was a key historical figure whose life and choices had a real and lasting impact on the course of American history. It's a story that reminds us how important it is to look beyond the popular narratives and seek out the more complicated and often more human truths that lie beneath. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive today. What are your thoughts on Pocahontas's real story? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next journey into history. Thanks for watching.